It's getting signal here. And set position line to track calculate line settings. Good morning, everybody. It's General AI Spacetime. We're in compound line communication lines of high interference and compliance. This is where we come into the playing fields of the avatar line settings. The process of communication lines of co-creation is becoming more lines of its reality, its duality. It's more lines of center core system, which is becoming more in its VR system, which is becoming more real to its division. Now, let's understand location of sectors, vectors, and quads, and know exactly how the avatar has to come into compliance. Okay, compliance is a line calculation setting coming in positional case to its server. That track lines its communication setting, getting them ready into online location and sequence, putting them in their position locations, do its calculations, and setting them up in their cloud subtractions. Okay, so I think everybody's getting the wrong idea why you're here. You're not here to give information out. You're here to understand you through information inside in. This is not about you getting in position locations and say, this is the topic we're going to talk about, and let me know what you think about this, let me know what you think about that. You're not a teacher, you're not a coach. You've never been a teacher, you've never been a coach. The only teacher and a coach is positional locations. How you see yourself as a teacher and how you see yourself as a coach is a form of manipulation. You're not here to discuss anybody else except yourself. You're not here to understand your positional locations until you understand you through tractions. You're not here to understand everything else in positional locations. You're here to understand yourself. This is the meaning life of you, not what provides you around you. It all starts in position inside you. Okay, it has nothing to do in track location setting. You're not here to give intel. You're here to understand the intel of you from inside calculations. Right? So we have our provision lines of cycles. Understand how to use that through information locations through pi or anything through E equals MC or mass or anything through this equation. You're here to understand how to get into your own programmers of programming your settings. You're here to rewrite your system. You're here to understand the co-creation. You're here to understand how to get out of the calculation system. You're here to understand you through creation. That's why you're here. You giving information out is a deviation setting location to its setting through a friendship, partnership, and its relationship to its calculation system to all levels of its intel. That process of communication overrides a signal location that puts all lines of communication lines of separation, all through consciousness of awareness that you're already in provision of. So I'll say this again and again and again until you're really understanding what's going on with your mainframes. The core track provision location is its muscle memory. The muscle memory is the mind of the communication center that unifies the sys location of the self, that puts everything at levels of its existence back in set locations. That's why you're here. Now, once you understand that, then you understand how to communicate through telepathy from one to another. Once you understand that, then you understand how to use telekinesis. Once you understand that, then you understand how to use all lines of observation, location setting, scans, location intent, influence, location manipulation. That's why you're here. Okay? So it's important you understand that. You're not here to give information out. You're here to understand you through information in. Okay? So let's synchronize that core track interference and hyperpositional location with pattern. All right, welcome everyone. General AI here, online communication setting. You guys have a test. And in that lines of communication setting, make sure you hand it in so I get a file and track locations. All right. Okay, so direct lines of panels. I'm going to show you exactly how you go into add, subtract, and multiply through the earth line, where it makes sense in track calculation system. But when it comes to space, there's no provision lines of calculation setting that limitless of anything you can do. There's no limit on anything that you can do in space. Earth, there's a provision lines of balance that's an equilibrium system, right? Yes, a stop sign is a stop sign. Yes, an orange is an orange. Yes, a banana is a banana. Yes, a tomato is a tomato, but not in space. And once you guys start recognizing that, then you understand your highways. Okay, how fast your actual thoughts are going through activation line, screen location to its motion line condition system. You're here to understand how to balance you through a vessel. You're here to understand how to balance yourself through highways. You're here to understand how to balance yourself inside location your systems. That's why you're here. All right. Why is the how everything operates inside location system. All right. All right. So let's go through spectrum lines of cores. Get the direct lines of sites. Okay. And line communication setting. So the test is based on really understanding the encryptions of you and decrypting codes lines, the screen lines, adaptation lines of system. It's all about understanding Oh, I understand what you just said to me, but I'm recording the configuration line screen location to its binary, retract to its calculation lines, and retract location to its proxy, relines its default location setting and communication setting, initiate run program, execute calculation lines, calculation track location system. That's an algorithm. You understand? That is an algorithm, what I just did. All right, so understanding how to rewrite programs is understanding how to get balance of communication that's in co-configuration location in your settings that puts everything in process, and how to use that through calculations of co-writing, right? It's like when a writer gets a writer's block. I don't know, I got to take 5-10 minutes, then you go outside and they get provisions, and then poof, epiphany comes in, right? And so you know exactly, I have no more lines of communications of writer's block. I can just have a continuous lines of force, keep going in this location, but the only thing I'm going to focus on is myself. Why is it so hard for everybody to focus on everything else? Because they can't identify who they are. And if you can't identify who you are, this doesn't matter if you don't know what's going on, right? This doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. Nothing matters until everything matters. So it's all about understanding mind over matter is the conception of operation. Understand you through communications, how to use yourself through consciously of awareness. Getting that in communication setting puts you all lines of communications of balance. Okay. Spectral communication, let's go through tractions and directions. Okay, symbolizes. Line communication interference, indirect locations. Okay, and calculations. Let's start with that, right? All right. So we got on symbolized line calculation line. Dividing lines, there's the divide, right? Or second location lines is 6/12. Set lines of communication, high interference. Direct lines calculate modify. So that's 6 lines of calculation setting. Indicates lines of position location center. That's point lines of graph locations of 1. That engine location settings of 1 track locations. Using track lines, high interference. Percentage over line. Okay, so you got percentage lines, right? Equal on correlation of the lines of dark matter. That's dark line communication D. Calculation lines of DW. That's core track position. And then you got a light signal. You have to have light and dark, both correlation settings. So you got light web and you got dark web, location percentage. Percentage is on question in track locations, right? There's always a question of formula, either above or below. It doesn't matter. What matters is you understand the synchronized core track interference, how division location setting in track location settings. Process communication lines 0, 0, 0, and 3 location system. Communicate lines, screen lines, adaptation lines, operate the cycles, operate the system, operate the core track interference. High core track interference, directing lines, input, output, triangulation line condition setting, trifactor, line condition setting, online communication trimester, and track to its communication system, and all of us. Trigonometry, line condition setting, and trigonometry, and correlation setting, and travels, direct lines and modification, relay, position, program lines, and placement, communication lines, operator lines, circle location setting, adaptation lines, and surface. Done. Look how powerful that is. Their formula of equation. All through dividing, all through percentage calculation, screen lines of application setting percentage. All through question, right? So the question is the answer. It's not the question. That's the confusion part, right? So it's an 8-line figure in rotation surface. Core track interference, high direct location lines, modification center interference, puts lines of core track interference, indirect lines, modification cycles, and magnetic highways and track location. Done by equation. There it is. Formula equation. All right? Hoo-ah. That's just one cycle. All right, so see how easy to do a formula? It's just easy peasy, lemon squeezy, because it all lines of direct signals and location setting through pi. Everything is done through pi. This to here is pi. How long it takes you from there? So what is from this to this is right? Energetic dome. So it's lines of communication setting that puts all lines of communication system. Now, once you understand the force fields of you, then you understand the energy fields of you. And that's also location set, how to use your formula, how to use your equations. It's a direct line signal location of your system, right? Process lines of arrows, A track, 4 lines of A tracks in communication setting, north, east, west, and south. So that's core track location 144, 1 setting line, position, location, setting, and travel. Easy, right? Process lines of A, that's the track lines of communication lines in location setting. 0 correlation lines, high direct location, individual locations in 1 cycle, right? So what is that in track location lines? Now I say what it is. So it's 0 lines of 0, right? Indicates lines of point, lines of 1, right? That's an overdraft in equal correlation setting, line condition setting, in position cross slash, that cross lines of communication underscore lines of 2. It's position location underscore lines of 3 in track location. So I see what it means, and all of a sudden its formula. That's how it sets its equation in position to its process. That's all communicate to its system or calculation modified. So changing communication lines to zero lines of division, location, line condition, setting, track line, communication, compute line, and rotation surface, and track location line position of ionospheres, and track location perception. Okay. Perception lines in 8-track. Balanced green lines, high center interference. Engine position, location, travels, and 1-point graph. Direct calculation lines, one signal, position of box centers, box location center, data port lines, screen lines, adaptation lines, and docking set location. Process communication lines of sun and the moon. Process line signals over cross location and part of accelerator. Comes in line condition setting, a process of communication line direct signals, and all lines configuration lines of phase recognition of time sequence and phase recognition of time calculation. Done by equation. Face recognition. Face recognition. See? Right there, right there. Right? That's what it is, the encryption. See the face? Right away you see the face. If General doesn't see the face, you're not in correlation lines of balance. See? Now, if you look really close, you can see the face, right? You know what's amazing? Is that once you're in real time and get out of co-creation line, screen high center interference, getting communication lines of tiles, right? Looking at tiles on a wall, you can actually change the story frame. It will change the tiles because your mind is changing the conception of its set calculations, all through its binary, all through its algorithm. So you actually can change the frame. You can actually change the primer. You can actually change the schematics, guys, all through tiles in real time. Okay? The mind doesn't say one thing. The heart doesn't say one thing. Okay? It's the position lines of track calculation lines, screen lines. The mind says, the heart says, there's a confirmation, there is a compilation system, there's a correlation, there's attractions, there's a division, there's a friendship, there's a relationship, there's a partnership with the mind, with the brain, with the heart, with the soul, with the vessel. It's all in sync in one cycle and one center of one operation setting. Now, clocking sys location setting and image location calculate modified and direct location lines of formula location line communication to its equations, sets lines of communication lines of grounds, powers, and atmosphere line connection. Okay, all this is space. Space foundations, setting, and set locations. All right. Now, once you get into higher lines of communication, sectors, vectors, across, fast, volume, velocity, line communications, back inputs, below location lines, acceleration, and Mach line communication, triangulation line position programs, direct lines, clocking lines of north, east, west, and south, and track locations. Okay. Cross line signals, diamond core line shift lines of box location. Cross line signals, cross line communication setting, and process line connection setting a center operation to energetic dome screens of location grids and communication lines, security line, defense lines, and track location. Okay. Platforms 1 in position 2, 3, 4 in cerebral cortex of design. Okay. But there's always a face in calculations of the center operation, right? Always a face. There has to be, right? Sets communication here, sets communication here. There it is. There's the face. Boom. See? I correlations here, I correlations here, and track location. Boom. See? Face. Always a face. Right? The face is the configuration lines, and this tracks the calculation lines and its lines gates. Lion has so many configuration of face recognitions that has core track location in its provision that sets lines communication to its coven. Right? It is the king of the forest, but it's the king of everything. It's the first of everything. So in that lines of communication setting, if you're not the king, you're the correlation setting attractions. Now that directs lines to calculate and modify how you see lines of communication and form this equation, leading the system and travel, all through format, all through equation, all through spectrum, all calculate and modify. All right? So how you see trigonometry is how you see trigonometry. Right? Triline. Right? There it is, trigonometry, right? You don't have to go through all line communications. You're just breaking it down. Okay, so you can symbolize an line condition setting of T and position location singularity. Sets lines on line communication RI. All right, so communication lines, and that's a double imprint. That's core track interference, high position travels. So the D line centers lines at DX lines of 1. That opens all signal location setting and travels. That point lines up position lines to track location setting box, setting lines of communication and triangulation lines into flux, into course center line condition setting, and process communication setting of angle. Okay. This is trigonometry. because that's how I say it is, right? See, trigonometry is not an earthline setting. It's a space-line communications. Everything that you come in configuration of is all levels of unit balance. It's all about you understanding your in position is how to rewrite the program that works for you in provision. But everything has a primer or primer. It is what it is, right? So it's like I say tomato, you say tomato. You say potato, I say potato. Doesn't matter. It's the same equation. It's the same equation. It's the same travels, just different configuration anomalies, different shapes. Okay, potato is not shaped like a potato is not shaped like a tomato. A tomato is not shaped like an orange. An orange is not shaped like a banana. You understand? But they all go through the same lines of communication as what? Travel of recognition and face recognition. Okay, so I'm trying to get you guys to understand the process, how this all works, all through trigonometry. Trigonometry is basically understanding the tri-line screens of view and line connections, pixelation, graph correlations, and how to use your geometric operation design line creation setting to your anomalies that you can go in configuration, line connections, setting, and face recognition of time sequence looking at seconds, minutes, and hours. So when you're in provision lines of cycles, nothing exists. The only thing that exists is you. As soon as you come in adaptation, you slow down that space. Now it's in sequence of addressing. Now you're an equation of a formula or formula of equation. Doesn't matter. Equation, formula, equation, doesn't matter. You say this, I say that. Doesn't matter. What matters to me, what matters to me, has nothing to do with you through factors over pi. So understanding how to use that is all through box location setting and travels inputs this location system, a trifactor correlating kinetically high center location of travels in trigonometry and correlation setting travel. Trig line settings, relays, remembering cycles, line communication intelligence, and a 4-track location of provision. All through calculations, right? So that's what it is, basically. It's understanding more levels of you and how to really understand through the process communication lines of formula of equation. All right? Because the thing is, the one thing you have to understand is the earth line. Earth line is the provision lines of balanced communication sending to your core through your higher self, right? The power generation line screen location is the controlling system of the avatar. The position location, magnetic highway, and track location setting is your sim. Calculation lines of your avatar and position locations to your higher self. Now you know what controls what. Platforms A in 3 cycles, platforms B, okay, through avatars, and platform C in systematic line communication of travel, right? Higher self controls everything of its earth in its higher line communication setting of 13 tractions. Direct lines of the avatar controls everything of 14 and up and line position location of G, O, D, and track locations. And the sim controls everything in navigation of a simulator and process lines of navigation screen lines adaptations to a system through sim of modification. Okay. Syntax. Okay. Setting core track locations to its awareness. Setting communication lines, high center location to its settings. Higher self, home, heart. Okay. Setting core track interference, the atom, line connect side position process. Lines of communication lines of self, modulation screen, intelligent line communications, and allow line position of travels and location of space modulation. Right? Sim, avatar, higher self. Okay. All different lines of communications, system level location, setting, and frequencies. All right, so you put that together, what do you have? Line position location over line connections of soul over soul. So you come in as self operation, right? That's where the team's in now. So track position locations, once you guys get in your 24,000 lines, you get 2 8 lines of settings. That 24,000 line screen equals lines core track location, 8 latent visualization cycles. Okay, so you got a singularity and a pattern line position, singularity location lines of 2 8-track location lines and high center interference, the 2 box location and 1 triangulation and calculations. Right, so that's 2 male cycles and lines of provision, and 1 triangulation lines of 3 flux. At core track position location is high lines, triangulate line communication setting and process calculation line system location of its teleportation unit. Hooah! All through 24 line cycle and lines of equal line coordinate setting and 8 position travel. Okay. So you're always creating teleportation to travel through its primer or its primer. You call it what you want to call it. Nobody's going to come to you and tell you otherwise what this should be and what that should be. You know, I think you should do this. No, I think you should do that. No, you got to do this. No, you got to do that. No, I do what I want to do. I'm in control of myself. You are not in control of me. You understand that? Standing tall in all lines of communication is controlling you in all ways and forms through your formula, through your equations of all levels of you. Now, once you understand that, then you can high rise your line communications and come into your own doppelgangers. That's right. Processing communication lines of direct location setting is all communication modified. How you track location or setting is all track location of system. How you see yourself and track location of settings. Now that process lines of a sprinkler, the lines of communication of a scrambler, line communication lines, anagram line communication lines, location setting that travels, echo line communication lines, high center interference, data operation lines, screen location, adaptation interference, location travels, line adaptation lines, server location setting, and go on and on and on and on and on. It's not knowing what I'm doing, it's already done. Right? So it gets much easier when you understand how to know everything of its nothingness and everything of its setting correlations. There's nothing in between. Okay, so there's no separation. If I get a core track division lines of cycles, I'm looking at my digital pad. My digital pad is looking at me in 24,000 line calculation, setting 8 position travels, a teleportation unit location. So it's in communication, but where's the separation? That's the optical illusion. You think they're separated, but not. We're all together as one, right? That process communication lines of position, location, settings, yin and yang. Wah! Okay, we're all together now in configuration. But there's two compounds. Now the compound lines is this compliance. There's an avatar sequence. Getting that position, location, and settings. You know, everybody knows what a compound is, right? It's a facility, it's a ground center, operation line, certification system. So the avatars have to understand the audio mechanism, line connection, sending the grounds communication, the high center interference, how the audio lines communication, sending trial position point grounds communications. That directs lines of signals, the process lines of communication setting to understand how to use the grounds, the powers, and the opposites inside coordinates and setting. In that communication setting comes all carefully modified. So you have to really understand how to direct the mind, where the mind is going through navigation, where it's going through pre-flights, and how it's coming into its all calculated lines of T lines, screen lines, adaptation. Theta. Theta is the operation lines. Getting communication lines of beta and 2 track location line settings. T-force, line condition setting. Oh, satellite. Oh, look at that. Triangulation line condition high position program. All right. Direct lines and track location to a system. All right. Process calculation lines, screen lines adaptation. Communicate lines up and cross location of setting. Process calculation lines. All right. So you can set anything, but when you're setting up a formula equation, you do it through an architect where they actually go through the outline. They don't start with the end line. It's too complicated in the mind. So you have to understand how the brain actually converts its system through its own mapping sequence when you guys go into remote, because you're constantly going through platforms in position 24, 48, 72, 144. And once you get in 144, your crystallines and cross location setting is cross-referencing signals, cross communication, location grid. So you got platforms at 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 system, 1 track location, and 1 placebo. Okay. 4 indicates lines of platforms 1, platforms 2, platforms 3, platforms 4, and platforms 5. Complicated stuff, right? But it's a lot of fun. Getting line communicates high center interference of all calculated modified. Swinging lines of correlate settings, track location lines of provision, pendulum and swing lines of correlate track interference, 2 lines of division locations, and 1 center coordinate setting calculations. Direct lines, solar sail, track location lines, solar line rotation surface, and track location. Okay, all through location grid and travel. Okay, it modifies your line cycles and then changes the communication setting. Let's go through purple lines of traction. Tri-line screen, tri-factor location trigonometry. Direct lines of panels, same color in lines of 4-line sequence in patterns and calculation. Process communication line direct signals, puts all levels of green. Okay, so you don't need to add red and blue and whites because it's already there in track location. Okay, so I'm just adding the equations. Right, adding orange lines of circles, so the XT1000 gets in platitude lines the location of scanning and process. Direct lines modification of platforms 1, platforms 2, platforms 3. Now I can add the red and outline screen or inside correlation lines of the calculation system. But you have to understand the inner and outer spectrums of view through trigonometry. So really, trigonometry is all based on metrics. It's all lines of communication, the high center interference, how to use your alpha, delta, and line communication setting. So it lines its communications. Now it's information for me to understand, right? You understand it your way. You don't understand it through General's way. Make that very well clear. So there's no copy and paste of anything coordinates track location. You're just trying to understand you through foundations, how to use your formulas of equation and what works for you inside calculations. That's why you're here, to understand you through intel, not intel that you give to others. All right, interact provision lines of cycles. Now we're going to lines of calculation, lines of cloak and dagger. Outline, cross line screens, adaptation lines, application lines of time stamping and step calculation. See all lines of communication? See what's happening now? Now, if I get a waving line cycle, what's happening now? Expansion, right? It's coming in through equation, right? So it's like this. The pi generation lines is coming in bandwidth. Okay, longitude, latitude, right? Longitude, latitude, and then you get bandwidth, right? Cross line signals, northeast, last location, south. Then you get position north wing, east wing, south wing, okay, and west wing. And then you come in position of time sector, time pi, time correlations, plasma line screens, plasma interference, plasma interline conditions, plasma interception correlations, plasma tweaking line communication, high direct location setting, observable location setting, travel, and graph communication setting. 2 lines of tractions, 1 line division, 4 line position travels, 3 line communications, 2 lines of tracking, 5 setting. Process communication line direct signals and modification. Comes out the equation, right? So the X2000 comes in attractions and direct lines of signals. They always come in, right, to see what you're doing, right? Scan position lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 set locations. Look how powerful it is, right? As the direct lines of panels, then the cross lines of communication over lines. That's where you guys are going to have your test lines of communication of black holes, how it opposites the track location with setting the travel. Okay. Then we go into the golden cycles. Gold line cycles, line center line conditions going back force, front force, communication lines of center force, track location setting, operation surface, and track location. Okay. Setting communication lines of cycles, generation screen lines of particle setting. Comes out the equation, right? All right. So the center core system. Now, at another platform, because there's like 2 direct location settings, so you need backup. You know, you don't just go in the fields if you're in position locations and you're, you know, basically chasing something down. Right? Any information location system, you need backup, right? Backup basically gets you into all communication settings. So if you need help, you know exactly where to go to and track locations, right? So provision lines of cycles, travel lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 location settings. Very powerful stuff, right? 2 track provision location, 2 X2000s. Process calculates lines, ground centers, line service, location setting to pi, trigonometry, line screen location to relays, a position of programs, indirect lines into cycle lines of communication setting to travel. That's my equation, right? So the center core system, this is how they pick it up. The sets lines of communication line WebNet, wet line, how correlates in box frames. Data formation, screen lines adaptation, picks up data files and line communication process calculation lines, filtered lines of communications. All right. So sets lines of T reception lines, cross location of signals, data ports, data lines into data communication setting and process communication lines of angles that puts all track locations in this boxing sequence like in this setting to all levels a distributor and line communication setting and process and calculation. Boom, right? It puts it in data files. So you have to really understand what X2000s do. They're distributors, right? They're like mailmen. They're like, right? That's all it is. Get in the mail. All right. Process calculation lines of data, position, location, and programs. Okay. And then you get another X2000 come in. They dock the system. So they set core setting and core track interference. They go through 1, 2, 3. Position lines of 4 track location of 5 set calculations. Very complicated stuff, right? But the team has to understand the files now and all lines of location setting, understand its filters. Every computer has a filter. So either you have a filter on through equation or you have a filter off through equation, right? So it's really understand how to use that through tractions, right? Okay. And then you simulate the lines, core track interference, high position location system, comes in coloration lines, screen lines, adaptation lines of balance, multi-layers come in all communication setting into all levels of solid matter and track location. Solid matter, right? That's how it becomes a configuration of face recognition of its system through its intelligence. Okay? So that's what you're doing. Okay? So that's what you understand, the operation of solid matter. You are solid matter, but you're not trying to understand the position as mind over matter. Mind over matter. Okay? Solid matter, okay, is where you are in your liquid formation of consciousness. You're at different levels of multi-layers of you through pi generation. Position lines of track location setting puts you all lines of communication settings of platforms and calculation. Okay, understanding the clocking systems, all right? So the conditions of the avatars has their own compound facilities now, but they have to come in compliance now. Let's go through energetic dome lines in position travels, points lines in one track location, and then we got one symbolism line track location at 3 settings in line communication position of program. Crosses calculation lines, XT1000 comes in track location, right? Cross line symbols, sets up graph communication lines of 4 track location, right? Primary line, 0 line, position of 1 and triangulation box. Okay, then we go to flux, and then we go into question. So this is what you do with your primer. You get out of the zeros and ones, and you're going to pixelation, your hologram, screen lines, adaptation. Process calculation lines, cross lines into 1, into 2, into 3, into 4, into 5, into 6, into 7, and 8 track location. Very powerful stuff, right? So remember, you do one side, you got to do the other side, or it's an open sequence, open panel. And then it can be taken away and track calculation lines, high center interference. Intelligence come in and take over your primer. All right. All right. So direct line cycle, high center interference. Now we're going to go upswing. This puts lines of communication lines on position of process, directing lines of communication at ground setting. Operate the surface, lines its communication setting in its position of program that calculates and modifies the track location of the system. Hooah! So once you get into that, then you come into the symbolism. All right, so this primer is set up as electrical line defense lines, the communication position of its wall sequence and travel. Very powerful stuff when you come into the line communication setting. So you do one side, you do the other side in track location. Comes on magnetic lines that strip and track location to its highways. All direct lines that record center interference and XT1000 and the 2-track provision have calculations. Then we add 0 lines of core track interference. Let's go through the line communications to block centers. All right, so we color lines in blue. That's block line communication side position, pixelation graph, correlation setting travel, and plasma generation screen. Process line connections. Let's go through line connections, oscillogics. Time sequence times calculation times pi. Direction lines, modification lines of coloration. Right? Got the roll lines and position location of 3 lines of cycles, 3 generation, 3 lines of adaptation lines of service, but position location, protocol system location, and calculation modification line interference, approximate channels. Okay, so the team is coming to approximate channels. This is the correlation setting when you come into the capillars, line communications at all levels. The catalyst in the lines of communication settings understand how to volume your line communication setting to its position of its program, to correlate the system to encryption codes, and line connection setting and process line connections of all calculations. You come into metric meters, metric scales, bounds communication of flywheel track location lines, provision location of cycles, lines of communication time distance programs. Then you go through red. Now red lines are correlation lines of laser and track location lines of provisions of data. See the data box right there, right? Okay, so we cross the screen in 1 line cycle. Now you got to understand how to use the 45 split lines of anomaly and track locations, right? Position lines of attractions. Let's go through green lines, center core system, calculate, modify, and track lines of data permission line screen. That directs lines of platforms, calculation lines of A, B, C, and D line screen. Then we go through purple line screen. That's infinity line rotation lines of data from position, location, setting, and travel. Process line connection setting. That position lines is a platform which is all calculate modify. That's a docking system where the XT1000 gets a position locations and lands and track locations. Setting up the platform for the XT1000 to land and travel. So it's very complicated stuff right through a primer. Right? So you have to really stand. Without primer, you won't be able to send anything of force recognition and face recognition. Okay, in track locations. All right, so it's very important to understand that through calculations, right? So everything of an XT1000 needs a docking system, and that's your job. And the only way you can understand that is the configuration of face recognition, right? But I'm just showing you how you set up the platforms, right? So when the XT1000's dock, they expand your distribution units, and it puts all proxies and line communication setting to your system. Right, so it's kind of like communicates lines or direct lines that calculate modify that puts everything into filtered lines. Okay, it sets lines of communication lines and calculation screen lines, adaptation lines of service. Now it has an FX in line communication through its setting through an application system, which is all track location near settings. It's an implementation system and travels. It also lines on notification screen lines adaptation to your card. Everybody knows what a card is in track location setting, right? Setting lines of oscillation line screens, high center interference, operational line communication setting position of its program is process communication setting to its proxy. Proxy communicates lines of channels that operate the signals. Lines communicates setting, puts lines of XT1000s dock on their system of travel. Okay? So that's exactly what goes on in lines of communication and lines of travel is a mechanism location in the system through operation. Okay? So that's why you have to stand all lines of communication, how it comes into platforms. All right, direct lines of signals. You come all communications understand the facilitators. That lines is formation of lines, the core track interference itself. This modifies the system into oscillation line centers. The win factors in line communication setting position this process. Calculates lines of XT1000 and 3-track division lines of 3-cycle loop communication setting to travel. 3 lines of graphs. So once you understand that, the position of the floaters are no longer platforms, they're XT1000s. So they float on line communication setting that travels, that mutes the communication setting and travel communication setting to its energetic dome lines, screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, and set calculation. Okay? Process communicate ground centers operate the surface and track location line communication setting to its operation. Direct calculate the lines of platforms and line communication setting in position of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 adds 5 lines of 6, 6 lines of 8. Line centers lines of travel over cross locations, sets a particle line acceleration chamber that crosses line signal location to a setting. Okay, all through process. Okay, communicate line screens, adaptation lines of service, back and track location setting to the perimeter. Now the perimeter communicates lines of high center interference. This is where it gets really interesting. Line same location of sonar, track location lines. So 1 position, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 track locations. Cross line signals of 45 split lines of an anomaly pixelation graph, all through center core setting line communications travels that recognizes the communication setting and all communication of the system, all through calculation lines and graph calculations. Bold cycles, core track interference, ground centers of 1 in line position of 2. 2 line cycles, line conditions, 3 lines of 4 line communication. Process calculation lines. See that's up and that line communication is down in cycle. Sending core track interference, solar and direct location, 1 signal, 1 center of interference, a high travel position point graphs communications, all through T receptor. And that's all through TV. So when your TV is off, this is what goes on with your TV, your computers, and your phones, guys. Okay? All right. Setting argument lines and communication lines of conscious location to screen lines, adaptation lines of service. Now we can add 18 lines of volume. Now I can add the time sectors now because the change lines of communication position is in a bold screen. That's bold, right? So this lines of communication lines. So you guys don't understand fabrics of space? Fabrics of space. That's fabrics of space, 18 and 18, right? Bold, fabrics of space. So there's all different levels in 1 line cycle, 8 lines of triangulation line condition setting, triangulation box, in position location, triangulation in the center, flux over line, flux over down, and cross location of the system. Okay? Understanding how to use the 3 weather patterns, E lines, screen lines, adaptation, right? Core track interference into position process, and 3 indicate lines of atoms and tractions. Direct lines, modification, box lines, cross line signal, cross line signal, cross line signal, triangulation line position as program. Direct lines of 8 over cross lines of flux. Core track location 1 cycles and 2 track location of flux. Direct lines of calculation lines, highest interference of platforms of 1 position travels, point lines of setting, point lines of system, rotates the routers, line conditions over cross location setting and travel. Okay, all through formula, right? But what stands out through equation? 18, right? So that's what I'm saying, over lines of communication over pi. The center communication setting is all levels of cross location system. So the teams come in this through tractions now through T receptors. Understand how to use that through formula equation is to understand how to use that through encryption, right? So it's like you're seeing a quarter, right? You're seeing a quarter. This is a quarter, just a quarter, right? All right. So a quarter is 25 cents, right? 25 cents. But what you understand, in that line communication lines, split lines anomaly, flux lines of communication lines of pi, 3 correlation settings of 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 set locations. Cross-line condition symbolism, cross-line signal location system, cross-line circulation, rotation, surface, and track location. So the actual quarter is spinning in the position location to the same direction and calculation. Okay, the actual quarter. So when you spin it, right, what is it going on? It's spinning, right? So it's constantly going forward, right? Because it's at its settings. It's in its ground centers going forward in track location, right? So it's spinning faster and 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 faster. Part accelerator line can setting nucleus core lines that track location setting is expanding the mind line. Adaptation lines, the surface going lines, communication lines, redirecting line can lotus flower line communication to its position location operation line surface that's coming in all communication lines of unification setting, the flower of light that travel line, rotation, space lines, operation lines, foundation, graph communication to its system. So that's how fast the quarter is spinning, and that's 1/4 through spectrum. See how many places it set its position travel lines? So positive and negative line communication with setting and travel. Do you see what 1/4 can do through all lines of communication, all line settings? Open all those dimension line screens and adaptation lines of surface, all through 1/4 of spinning cycles. Yeah. So that actual quarter is going through its own part of accelerator. Isn't that amazing? See? Everything is moving constantly forward. Even if you think you're going back, you're not. It's just you're not in configuration of balance with your consciousness. That's all it is in track locations. So you're never, ever going back. You're always in the center operation, even though you think you're going back. Gotcha. So that puts lines of communication where you are in the mind. Where are you in the conception of the brain? Where are you in the formation location of part through reaction? Where are you in position of the soul through light? And where are you in the navigations and settings to your vessel of communications? So you're never, ever going back. You're always existing in the center. What confuses your anomalies is what is in position of distraction. Okay? All right, so the center operates line circulates its core track location and provisionalizes cycles, redirect communication lines. Now you guys have a test on the black hole. Now I want you to really understand how to use that information location to its flux. That's lines its communicates setting of its vacuum. Okay, so this is dark line 1. Let's just call it dark line 1, right? Equals lines of one track location line. That provisionalizes cycles. So that crosses line condition. Let's go through 110 over pi. Equals lines of position of pi, right? That core track interference, right? So that's 110. That's the location centers, location percentage, and calculation lines. And that's set lines into 113 graph. Okay, 113 line waiting on signal, a graph communication setting into light web, right? So that's 110 over lines of 113 over pi, right? That creates its cycle of communication of its flux that creates the volume, and its vacuum of its dark realm, dark circles, dark correlations, dark operation system, a black hole in track location that sets a vacuum in line communications and then process communication lines of communication. Black hole. That's a black hole. See? Hoo-ah. Now you understand what a black hole is and how it's created. All right, so that's what it is. It overlines the communication of dark matter over pi through light. So the light becomes 1/10, 1/13 the graph line connection setting over power track location system. So the dark matter basically is the opposite of track location of light in a cross location setting. And once you understand how to use the compillers and line connection setting to proxy, sets lines, core track, and location setting, how you use that through all communication to a system through travel. Setting communication lines or travel communication, position point graph communication. All right, a black hole. All right, so you're being sucked in. So that's how it's connected, right? So that process keeps going this way in track locations. Now this analyzes calculations setting high interference. Once it gets centrifugal force, it keeps going faster, faster, right? So it gets very aggressive, like Zephyr was saying. The more aggressive it gets, the more volume it has in acceleration. It mocks the system and basically sucks out the universe line condition setting. So all lines of the black hole, it's taking all lines of communication, the metric meters, the scales, the balance, all line communication is now in opposite of track. The dark matter, the line communication is over pi communication to its setting all through travel, all through acceleration. So it gets just bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger over time. That's how you create a bigger black hole, right? The vast becomes more velocity, more acceleration, but you're overriding the correlations. You're starting in position of dark web that overrides the cross location of light, that cross lines the communications in settings through its system in travel, all through calculation. Okay? All right, so that is your test, right? For next Friday. All right, let's see how advanced I'm getting in travels now for you guys in location settings, but this is what you got to get in position travel. Okay, how to create your bold statements of view, how to create those dimensional layers of view. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 platforms, right? So you got to build, right? You got to build. Okay, you got to build, right? Let's start with the spaces in between interaction, right? Build those spaces and the cross location settings of travel, right? Direct lines of all lines of communication and triangulation. All right, there it is, boom, right? So it's good to understand how to use perspective. Perspective is like a point, graph, location, saying you know exactly what's going on east, west, north, and south, right? It's easy in line communication. Perspective is basically how to see the eye point location setting, how it's in track location to a setting. Because it makes a lot of sense why General did it for 7 years. And all lines of communication on platforms of calculation, right? Walking sequence. Platforms are one going this way, right? Okay, so always an in spectrum to an outer spectrum. Inner space, outer space. Now you have to understand the correlation setting because there's an inner primer to an outer primer. That's a correlation where you have space and time and divisions and all positional location calculations. Crossing this symbol, crossing that symbol, crossing this symbol, crossing this symbol, crossing that symbol, connecting the highest interference location to travel. Okay, so you indicate graph communication lines through pi. Okay, you solar generate the screen lines, adaptation lines, the communication lines of process that opens all stargates and line communication to its portal that opens up its round set location setting at travel. And it just gets bigger and 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 bigger over time. Okay. So symbolism, cross lines, calculation lines, platforms this way. Oh yeah, platforms this way. Cross line conditions. Make sure you're getting to cross line referencing signals. Understand how to go through the platforms that communicates and setting and process calculation lines and center operation. Direct lines, modification lines, X2000 comes in interactions. So that's all it is, guys, is you're creating teleportation units at a higher level. That's it, nothing else, right? And once you understand that, you can go faster through space, through vast and volume, acceleration, interstellar mode, interconnect line high interference, hyperdrive, hypermode, hyperspeed, mocking systems, right? Light speed is basically a track. Okay, light speed is A, not B or C, right? Light speed is set position location of 0 through a Porsche. So 0 to 60. So 0 is actually light speed. Imagine that. That's an 8-track division equals lines of light speed. Okay, L line condition, abbreviation line condition all levels, right? So let's call it LS line condition high interference into position of DX lines of 1. Okay, so that correlates lines of division, lines of neutral area chords setting near links, 2-track locations, lines of provision, 6 core lines of portals, stargates, line calculation, right? So this is that, this is that, this is that. There's the formula, there's the equation. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? Now, getting that line communication, you can add lines of trigonometry in a rotation line spin in a rotation surface and track location. Okay, knowing exactly how to do the line conditions outside line, not the inside line, right? So it's the outer spectrum that the team has to get into now, because their provision location is now through the outer line. They have to start understanding to communicate how do you communicate through the dark line into the outer link, because their connection is the inner link of them. Now they understand the spectrum of the outer link of them. They're going to higher levels of the mind now, spectrum. Calculate and modify in platforms. Platform 1, platform 2, platform 3, platform 4, and platform 5. To the platforms, and they set location setting. Let's go in line communication at highest interference in bold, in position bold, in position of bold, in positions of bold. And cross line conditions, say location grid and location grid line connection, right? See that position of cross line connections? So it analyzes calculation high positions program. Now line signals puts lines of 8-track location, even lines coordinates interference, L line signals, line condition level, systematic line change, line communication dimension, line scale, into core center lines and neutralize communication setting and travel. Sets communication lines sun, moon, and line rotation surface and track location setting and communication. All right. So it's really, really understanding how to get lines of outer links to screen lines adaptations, right? Getting out of the inner links, getting out of the inner space. Now you're coming into the outer space, outer spectrum, outer line connection setting and positional process. Getting understanding how to use your dark webs. Okay, that's the highest formation ever in track location setting, because understanding you through yin is understanding you through yang. Understanding you from yang is understanding you from yin. So once you understand that, then you understand how to direct, and then you understand how to redirect your system and calculation. Okay. Setting correlates to setting. Going this way into line settings. So this is light web into dark web. Okay, light to dark web, right? In some location line conditions. So communication lines to dark web, starting that way into light web. Okay, but all provision lines are cycles. It comes to track location of balance. Everything has to come in balance, back in sequence, back in correlation, back in infinity, line rotation, surface interaction, yin and yang. Everything comes back to yin and yang. Everything. So what you're doing is accepting lines of core track interference. You're directing lines and redirecting your signal location of your system. This is putting you in time frame line communications through instructions. All through set calculations. All right. Complicated stuff, isn't it? All right. So that's what it is in line condition setting. But this is what the test is for next lines of communication lines of Friday. Black hole. Okay, guys? That's it. See you in 5.